Hey there, welcome to Stoic Insights. I'm excited you're here because today we're diving deep into one of the most timeless and practical philosophies ever created, Stoicism. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Wait, philosophy? That sounds complicated and boring. But hold on a second, I promise you, Stoicism isn't just for dusty old scholars or people sitting in togas, meditating on mountaintops. Stoicism is a philosophy for life, one that's actually super relevant in today's fast-paced, often overwhelming world. Imagine you could handle life's toughest challenges, whether it's a bad day at work, dealing with difficult people, or just the general anxiety that seems to come with modern living, with grace, calmness, and resilience. Well, that's what Stoicism is all about. It's like having a mental toolbox that helps you face whatever comes your way without losing your cool. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's talk about what Stoicism is, where it came from, the vision behind it, and most importantly, why it matters so much today. Before we dive into this journey, I want you to take a moment and think about the last time something really frustrating happened to you. Maybe it was a bad day at work, someone cut you off in traffic, or maybe you were just feeling overwhelmed by life's endless demands. Whatever it was, how did you handle it? Did it ruin your day? Did you feel angry or stressed about it long after it happened? Now imagine this. What if I told you that there's a way to face these everyday challenges? Not just the big life crises, but even the small, annoying things, with a sense of calm and resilience that allows you to stay grounded no matter what's going on around you. Sounds too good to be true, right? But that's exactly where Stoicism comes in. Stoicism is this ancient philosophy that has been around for more than 2,000 years. It was originally developed by some of the greatest minds in ancient Greece and Rome. But here's the thing, even though it's old, it's not outdated. In fact, it's more relevant than ever in today's fast-paced, often overwhelming world. If you're feeling stressed, anxious, or like life's just throwing too much at you, Stoicism might be exactly what you need. So, sit back, relax, and let me take you on a journey through Stoicism, what it is, where it came from, why it was such a big deal in the ancient world, and why so many people today, from CEOs to athletes to regular folks like you and me, are turning to Stoic principles to help navigate the ups and downs of life. All right, let's get started. First things first, what is Stoicism? At its most basic level, Stoicism is a philosophy that teaches us how to live a good life. But here's the twist. The Stoics believed that a good life isn't about chasing pleasure or avoiding pain. Instead, it's about living in accordance with nature and accepting the things you can't control while focusing on what you can control. And that's a huge deal because if you think about it, so much of our stress, anxiety, and frustration comes from trying to control things that are completely outside of our power, right? We get upset when people don't behave the way we want them to, or when things don't go according to our plans. But the Stoics remind us that we can't control the outside world. What we can control is how we respond to it. Imagine this, you wake up one morning and it's pouring rain. Your plans for the day are ruined. You can't go to that outdoor event you were excited about. In that moment, you have a choice. You can let the rain ruin your mood, complain about it all day and feel miserable, or you can accept that the weather is completely out of your control and choose to enjoy the day anyway. Maybe you read a book you've been meaning to get to or spend time with family indoors. This shift in mindset from focusing on what you can't control to focusing on what you can control is one of the most powerful ideas in Stoicism. But how did this philosophy start? And why does it have such staying power? To truly understand Stoicism, we need to go back in time. Imagine ancient Greece around 300 BCE, a world filled with bustling cities, marketplaces, and vibrant philosophical discussions. It's a time when people gathered in public squares to debate big ideas, question the meaning of life, and search for answers to human existence. Philosophy back then wasn't just an academic pursuit, it was a way of life, a guide for how people could live and make sense of the world. And it's within this intellectual atmosphere that Stoicism was born. Our story begins with Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism. Zeno wasn't originally a philosopher or a scholar. In fact, he started his life as a wealthy merchant. Born around 334 BCE in Citium, a city in Cyprus, Zeno was a man of means, navigating the Mediterranean Sea as part of his trading ventures. But as fate would have it, Zeno's life took a dramatic turn. According to legend, while transporting goods across the sea, his ship was wrecked in a terrible storm. The shipwreck left him with nothing, his fortune was gone, and his future was uncertain. But as the Stoics would later teach, adversity often brings opportunity. After the shipwreck, Zeno found himself in Athens, wandering the streets with little to his name. One day, he wandered into a bookstore and picked up a copy of Xenophon's Memorabilia, a book that recounted the teachings of the great philosopher Socrates. Zeno was hooked. Reading about Socrates, who was famous for his wisdom and for living a virtuous life, sparked something inside Zeno. He realized that wealth and material possessions weren't the key to a good life. He wanted to understand what it truly meant to live well. And so began his journey into philosophy. Inspired by Socrates' ideas, Zeno sought out the greatest philosophers in Athens. He became a student of Crates of Thebes, a prominent Cynic philosopher. Now, the Cynics were known for their rejection of material wealth and societal conventions. They believed that the key to happiness was living in accordance with nature, rejecting the pursuit of pleasure and embracing simplicity. Zeno learned a lot from the Cynics, but over time, he found their teachings to be a bit too extreme. The Cynics had a habit of going to shocking lengths to prove their points. Some would live in poverty or even beg on the streets as a way of rejecting materialism. While Zeno appreciated their focus on living a virtuous life, he felt that their philosophy lacked balance. So after studying under various philosophers, including the Cynics, Plato's Academy, and the Megaric school, Zeno decided to develop his own philosophy. And that's how Stoicism began. Zeno started teaching in Athens around 300 BCE. Unlike other philosophers who taught in private schools or wealthy patrons' homes, Zeno chose to teach in the open air, right in the heart of the city. He held his discussions at the Stoa Poikile, a public colonnade or painted porch in the Athenian Agora. This was a bustling, vibrant place where people from all walks of life would gather. The Stoa was decorated with frescoes and paintings depicting famous battles, and it became the perfect backdrop for Zeno's teachings. Because of this location, Zeno's philosophy came to be known as Stoicism, named after the Stoa, where he held his lectures. Zeno's teachings resonated with many, and over time he attracted a loyal following. His students admired him not just for his intellectual insights, but for his character. Zeno was known for being a man of integrity and self-control, qualities that he believed were essential to living a good life. The core of Zeno's philosophy was this: a good life isn't about pursuing wealth, fame, or pleasure. It's about living in accordance with nature, developing wisdom, practicing self-discipline, and cultivating virtue. Zeno taught that the external world, things like wealth, health, and status, wasn't inherently good or bad. What mattered most was how we responded to life's events. He believed that while we can't control everything that happens to us, we can control our reactions. And that's where true freedom lies. Zeno's Stoicism was heavily influenced by Socratic ideas, particularly the belief that virtue is the highest good and that wisdom is the key to living a fulfilled life. But Zeno expanded on these ideas by emphasizing the importance of emotional resilience. For the Stoics, emotions like anger, fear, and desire were seen as disturbances that could cloud our judgment and prevent us from making rational decisions. By cultivating inner peace and emotional stability, Zeno believed we could live more fulfilling, virtuous lives. But Zeno wasn't the only one to shape Stoicism. After Zeno's death, his teachings were carried on and expanded by his successors. And that's where things get really interesting. Cleanthes, the second leader of Stoicism, the man who succeeded Zeno as the leader of the Stoic school, was Cleanthes, a former boxer who became a dedicated student of philosophy. Cleanthes had an impressive sense of determination. When he first arrived in Athens to study philosophy, he was so poor that he had to work at night to support his studies. During the day, he studied under Zeno, but at night, he carried water for gardeners or worked as a manual laborer to make ends meet. Despite his humble beginnings, Cleanthes became one of the most important figures in Stoic philosophy. He wasn't as intellectually gifted as some of his peers, but what set him apart was his incredible moral character and his deep commitment to living out the Stoic principles. Cleanthes wasn't just a thinker, he lived Stoicism. He believed that philosophy wasn't just something to be studied, it was something to be practiced in everyday life. Cleanthes expanded on Zeno's teachings and introduced the idea of logos, the rational principle that governs the universe. The Stoics believed that everything in the universe happened according to a rational plan, and that living in harmony with this logos was the key to a good life. For Cleanthes, this meant accepting whatever happened as part of the natural order and trusting that everything, even the difficult or painful things, happened for a reason. One of Cleanthes' most famous contributions to Stoicism was his hymn to Zeus, a beautiful poem that expressed his belief in the unity of all things and the idea that the universe is governed by divine reason. In this hymn, Cleanthes praises Zeus as the embodiment of the Logos and calls on people to align their actions with the rational order of the cosmos. Chrysippus, the systematizer of Stoicism. After Cleanthes, the next great figure in the Stoic tradition was Chrysippus, who is often considered the second founder of Stoicism. If Zeno laid the foundation for Stoicism, Chrysippus built the walls and gave it structure. He systematized Stoic philosophy, organizing and expanding on the ideas of Zeno and Cleanthes in a way that made Stoicism more coherent and comprehensive. Chrysippus was a prolific writer, producing over 700 works during his lifetime, though sadly, most of them have been lost. He was known for his sharp intellect and his ability to engage in complex debates. In fact, Chrysippus was so influential that later Stoics would say, if there had been no Chrysippus, there would have been no Stoa. One of Chrysippus's key contributions was his work on logic. He believed that in order to live a virtuous life, we needed to develop a strong understanding of logic and reason. He taught that the ability to think clearly and rationally was essential for making wise decisions and for understanding the world around us. Chrysippus also delved into ethics and physics, exploring how the principles of Stoicism could be applied to both the inner workings of the mind and the external laws of the universe. Chrysippus was also deeply committed to the idea that our emotions are based on judgments. He argued that when we feel anger, fear, or sadness, it's because we've made a judgment that something bad has happened. But if we can learn to reframe our judgments and see things more clearly, we can free ourselves from these negative emotions. This is a central tenet of Stoicism. By changing how we think about events, we can change how we feel about them. Under Chrysippus's leadership, Stoicism grew in influence and became one of the most popular philosophies in the ancient world. His work laid the foundation for later Stoics, who would continue to refine and expand the philosophy. Stoicism's spread to Rome, the Big Three. After Chrysippus, Stoicism spread from Greece to Rome, where it found its most famous and influential proponents, Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. while the early Stoics like Zeno, Cleanthes, and Chrysippus had focused more on the theoretical aspects of Stoicism, the Roman Stoics were much more practical. They were less concerned with abstract philosophical debates and more focused on how Stoicism could help people navigate the challenges of everyday life. The Roman Stoics were living in a world that was just as chaotic, unpredictable, and full of challenges as ours is today. And that's why their writings still resonate so deeply with people in the modern world. They understood that life is full of adversity, whether it's dealing with difficult people, facing personal setbacks, or coping with loss. But they also believed that we have the power to rise above those challenges by cultivating inner strength and resilience. And that's where we get to the heart of why Stoicism has had such staying power. It's not just a philosophy for intellectuals or scholars, it's a practical guide for how to live a good life, no matter what circumstances you find yourself in. One of the core ideas of Stoicism is this: you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it. And this isn't just about big, dramatic events. It's about the little things too. Someone says something rude to you, you can't control their words, but you can control whether you let them bother you or not. You lose a job, you can't control that, but you can control how you move forward. It's all about keeping your focus on what you can actually change, instead of wasting energy on what you can't. Now, let's talk about some of the key principles of Stoicism that will really help you put this philosophy into practice in your own life. One of the most important ideas is something called the dichotomy of control. This might sound fancy, but it's actually super simple. The dichotomy of control is the Stoic belief that there are only two things in life: things you can control and things you can't. And according to the Stoics, the trick to living a good life is focusing only on the things you can control and letting go of everything else. Think about how often we stress about things that are out of our control. We worry about the future. We obsess over what other people think of us. We get anxious about events that haven't even happened yet. But if we really break it down, so much of this stuff is completely beyond our control. The Stoics believed that by recognizing this and focusing our energy on what we can control, our thoughts, our actions, and our reactions, we can live a much more peaceful and fulfilling life. Let's dive into some examples to make this more concrete. Imagine you're at work and you've been working on a big project for weeks. You've put in the time and the effort, and you're really proud of what you've done. But when you present it to your boss, they're not impressed. In fact, they're kind of critical. Now, a typical reaction might be to feel frustrated, hurt, or even defensive. But let's apply the Stoic perspective here. Can you control your boss's reaction? Nope, that's completely out of your hands. What you can control is how you respond to that criticism. Do you let it get under your skin? Or do you take a step back, evaluate whether the feedback is useful, and use it to improve? Stoicism helps you choose the latter. Another key Stoic idea is something called amor fati, which translates to love of fate. This doesn't mean you have to love everything that happens to you in the sense of enjoying it. Instead, it's about embracing everything that happens, good or bad, as necessary and part of the natural order. The Stoics believed that everything happens for a reason, even if we can't always see or understand that reason in the moment. By accepting what happens instead of resisting or fighting it, we can find peace and move forward more easily. Let me give you an example. Let's say you've been planning a vacation for months. You've saved up, you've booked everything, and you're really looking forward to it. But then, just days before you're supposed to leave, you get sick or something unexpected happens and you have to cancel your trip. Naturally, this is disappointing, right? You could spend days or even weeks feeling frustrated and angry about the situation, or you could practice amor fati. The Stoic approach would be to accept that this is the reality now. Instead of lamenting what could have been, you adapt to the new situation and make the best of it. Maybe it's an opportunity to rest, recover, and focus on something else that's important to you. This doesn't mean you don't feel disappointed. It's okay to feel emotions, but it's about not getting stuck in them. The Stoics also had a concept called memento mori, which means remember that you will die. Now, I know this might sound morbid at first, but bear with me. Memento mori isn't about being obsessed with death. It's about recognizing the reality of our mortality so that we can live more fully in the present. Life is short, and none of us know exactly how much time we have. By keeping this in mind, the Stoics believed we could focus on what really matters and stop wasting time on trivial things. Think about how often we get caught up in little dramas, grudges, or petty arguments. When you zoom out and think about the bigger picture, that life is finite and we're not guaranteed tomorrow, those things suddenly don't seem so important anymore. Memento mori encourages us to make the most of each day, to focus on what's truly meaningful, and to let go of the things that don't matter in the long run. So how does all of this apply to modern life? Well, Stoicism has experienced a huge resurgence in recent years, especially among people who are looking for ways to manage stress, anxiety, and the constant pressure of modern life. Think about it. We live in a world that's more connected, but also more chaotic than ever. We're bombarded with news, opinions, and distractions from every direction. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, like we're losing control. But Stoicism offers a way to cut through that noise. By focusing on what we can control and accepting what we can't, we can reduce stress and find more peace in our everyday lives. In fact, many successful people today, from CEOs to athletes, swear by Stoic principles. Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek, often talks about how Stoicism helps him stay focused and grounded in his daily life. Ryan Holiday, a modern Stoic writer, has written books like The Obstacle is the Way and The Daily Stoic, which have brought Stoic ideas to millions of people around the world. One of the reasons Stoicism is so appealing in the modern world is because it's practical. You don't have to spend hours meditating or completely change your lifestyle to benefit from it. You can apply Stoic principles in small, everyday ways that make a big difference over time. For example, let's say you're stuck in traffic and you're starting to feel frustrated. Instead of getting angry, you can remind yourself that the traffic is out of your control. Getting upset won't make the cars move any faster. What you can control is how you use that time. Maybe you listen to an audiobook or a podcast, or you use the quiet time to reflect on your day. That simple shift in mindset, focusing on what you can control, can turn an annoying situation into something productive or at least less stressful. Another way to apply Stoicism in your daily life is through what the Stoics called negative visualization. This might sound strange, but it's actually a really powerful tool. Negative visualization is the practice of imagining worst-case scenarios in your mind, not to scare yourself, but to prepare yourself. By thinking about what could go wrong, you're better able to handle it if and when it does. And often, you'll find that the worst-case scenario isn't as bad as you initially thought. This practice helps you build resilience and reduces anxiety because you've already mentally prepared for the challenges ahead. Stoicism also teaches us to focus on the present moment. In today's world, it's so easy to get caught up in the past or to worry about the future. But the Stoics remind us that the only thing we truly have is the present. Marcus Aurelius, in his meditations, often wrote about the importance of focusing on the task at hand and not letting your mind wander too much into what's already happened or what might happen next. Let's say you're at work and you've got a big deadline coming up. It's easy to get stressed about how much you still have to do or to dwell on the mistakes you made earlier in the project. But the Stoic approach would be to bring your attention back to the present moment. What can you do right now in this moment to move forward? By focusing on the present, you're more likely to stay calm, productive, and clear-headed. Now, as we wrap up this exploration of Stoicism, I want to leave you with a few final thoughts. Stoicism isn't about being emotionless or suppressing how you feel. It's about understanding that life is unpredictable, that we will face challenges, setbacks, and losses, but that we have the power to choose how we respond to those things. It's about cultivating a mindset that allows you to remain calm, focused, and resilient, no matter what life throws your way. Stoicism teaches us to let go of the things we can't control and to focus on what we can. It reminds us to embrace the present moment, to live in accordance with our values, and to not waste time on things that don't matter in the grand scheme of life. And most importantly, Stoicism reminds us that true happiness comes from within, not from external circumstances, but from how we choose to navigate those circumstances. Let's dive a bit deeper into some of the practical applications of Stoicism in modern life, because this philosophy isn't just something to think about in theory, it's a way to actively live, and that's the beauty of it. Stoicism provides a toolkit to navigate the complexities and stresses of everyday life. One of the most important ways that Stoicism remains relevant today is in how it helps people manage stress and anxiety. Let's face it, modern life can be overwhelming. We're constantly connected to our phones, bombarded by news and social media, and pressured to succeed in our jobs, relationships, and personal lives. With all these demands on our time and attention, it's easy to feel anxious or stressed out. This is where Stoicism's emphasis on focusing only on what we can control can be a game changer. Think about how often we get stressed about things that haven't even happened yet. Maybe you're worried about a big presentation at work next week, or you're anxious about a medical test you're waiting on. You keep replaying possible scenarios in your mind, imagining all the ways things could go wrong. This is completely natural. It's something we all do, but here's the thing. Most of that stress comes from worrying about things that are out of your control. You can't control whether your boss likes your presentation or what the results of your test will be. All you can control is how prepared you are, how well you present, or how you take care of yourself in the meantime. This is where Stoicism's dichotomy of control comes into play again. When you realize that so much of what we worry about is outside of our control, you can start to let go of some of that stress. Instead of focusing on the outcome, which you can't control, focus on the process, on the actions you can take right now. This shift in mindset can significantly reduce anxiety because it takes the pressure off trying to control the uncontrollable. Another way Stoicism helps with stress management is through the practice of negative visualization, which, as we mentioned earlier, is about imagining worst-case scenarios. I know that might sound counterintuitive. Why would you want to think about negative outcomes? But here's the thing. When you take the time to consider what could go wrong, you're actually preparing yourself emotionally and mentally to handle those situations. It's like creating a mental buffer. If the worst-case scenario does happen, you're ready for it. And more often than not, you'll realize that the worst-case scenario isn't as bad as you feared. For example, let's say you're worried about a job interview. You could spend hours obsessing over all the ways it could go wrong. Maybe you'll forget what to say. Maybe you won't answer the questions perfectly. Maybe the interviewer won't like you. But instead of letting that anxiety spiral, you could take a Stoic approach and practice negative visualization. Imagine the interview going badly. What's the worst that could happen? Maybe you don't get the job. Is that the end of the world? Probably not. In fact, it might be an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to find an even better job down the road. Once you accept that even the worst-case scenario is something you can handle, the anxiety starts to lose its power. Stoicism also teaches us to practice gratitude and appreciation for the present moment. This is something that's incredibly relevant in today's world because, let's be honest, we often get so caught up in chasing the next big thing, whether it's career success, financial security, or personal achievements, that we forget to appreciate what we have right now. The Stoics believed that by focusing on what's good in the present moment, we can cultivate a sense of contentment and peace that isn't dependent on external circumstances. This idea is closely tied to the Stoic principle of living in accordance with nature. For the Stoics, living in accordance with nature means accepting the natural flow of life, the ups, the downs, the joys and the sorrows. It's about understanding that life is constantly changing, and trying to resist that change is what causes suffering. Instead of fighting against the natural order of things, the Stoics taught that we should embrace it. Here's a practical example. Let's say you're in a period of your life where things aren't going the way you'd hoped. Maybe you're struggling financially, or you're going through a difficult breakup. It's natural to want to resist those situations, to wish things were different. But Stoicism teaches us that life is full of these kinds of ups and downs, and they're all part of the natural order. By accepting that life isn't always going to be perfect, and by focusing on what we can control, we can navigate these challenges with more grace and less suffering. This ties into another core Stoic practice, which is journaling. Many Stoics, including Marcus Aurelius, kept personal journals where they reflected on their day, their thoughts, and their actions. This practice wasn't just about recording events. It was a way for them to process their experiences, to think critically about their reactions, and to remind themselves of the Stoic principles they were trying to live by. In modern life, journaling can be a powerful tool for self-reflection and personal growth. It gives you a space to step back from the hustle and bustle of everyday life and think about how you're reacting to the world around you. Are you focusing on things you can't control? Are you letting external events dictate your mood? Journaling helps you identify these patterns so you can start to shift your mindset. Plus, it's a great way to track your progress over time, which can be incredibly motivating. Now let's talk about one of my favorite Stoic concepts, amor fati. This idea of loving your fate, of embracing everything that happens to you, good or bad, is one of the most empowering aspects of Stoicism. It's not just about accepting what happens, it's about actively loving it, seeing every challenge as an opportunity for growth and every setback as part of your personal journey. This mindset shift can be incredibly freeing. Think about the last time something didn't go the way you planned. Maybe you missed out on a promotion, or a relationship didn't work out the way you'd hoped. It's easy to feel defeated in those moments and to think that life is unfair. But what if, instead of resisting those situations, you embraced them? What if you saw every obstacle as a chance to become stronger, wiser, and more resilient? That's what amor fati is all about. It's about letting go of the need for everything to be perfect and learning to love the imperfect reality of life. When you adopt this mindset, you stop seeing obstacles as something to fear or avoid, and you start seeing them as essential parts of your journey. In modern life, where we often feel the pressure to have everything figured out, amor fati offers a refreshing perspective. It reminds us that it's okay for things to go wrong, that failure isn't the end, and that we can grow from every experience if we choose to. And speaking of choosing how we respond to life's challenges, let's talk about another powerful Stoic practice, the art of letting go. Stoicism teaches us that attachment to things, whether it's material possessions, relationships, or even our own ideas, can lead to suffering. The Stoics weren't against enjoying life or forming connections, but they believed that we should always be ready to let go of things when the time comes. In today's world, we often cling to things that give us a sense of security, whether it's a job, a relationship, or even a certain lifestyle. But the truth is, life is unpredictable. Things change, people change, circumstances change. And when we're overly attached to something, we risk being devastated when it's taken away. The Stoic approach to letting go is about cultivating a mindset of non-attachment. This doesn't mean you don't care about things or people in your life. It just means you're not dependent on them for your happiness. You can love deeply, you can enjoy what you have, but you also understand that nothing is permanent. And when things inevitably change, you're able to adapt and move forward with grace. Imagine if we could approach life with this sense of non-attachment. How much stress, anxiety, and fear could we let go of? How much freer would we feel knowing that we have the strength to face whatever comes our way without being weighed down by the fear of loss? This is why Stoicism is so relevant in modern life. It offers practical tools for dealing with the uncertainties and challenges we all face. Whether it's managing stress, letting go of attachment, or finding peace in the present moment, Stoicism gives us a framework to live more mindfully, more resiliently, and more fully. Now, as we start to wrap up, I want to remind you that Stoicism isn't about perfection. The Stoics themselves weren't perfect. They struggled, they failed, and they had bad days, just like the rest of us. But what made them Stoic was their commitment to constantly improving themselves, to learning from their mistakes, and to facing life with courage and resilience. So if you're interested in applying Stoicism to your own life, start small. Maybe begin by practicing gratitude in the mornings, reflecting on what you can control during stressful situations, or spending a few minutes each day journaling about your thoughts and reactions. Over time, these small practices can add up to big changes in how you experience life. Remember, Stoicism isn't about changing the world around you, it's about changing how you see and respond to that world. And in doing so, you'll find that you're better equipped to handle whatever life throws your way. So the next time life throws you a curveball, take a deep breath, pause, and ask yourself, what's really within my control here? How can I respond in a way that aligns with my values and helps me grow? That's the Stoic way. Thanks for sticking with me through this journey into Stoicism. I hope you found it as insightful and practical as I have. Remember, Stoicism isn't just a philosophy to think about, it's something to practice every day. So go out there, live your life with purpose and resilience, and keep the Stoic mindset close to your heart.